All right, so very special guest, very special episode this evening as I'm joined by Alfred Fernandez, co-founder of Campus2Canton. Guys, if you don't know what this is, if you enjoy fantasy football and you love the college game, obviously you're here. You need to check this out. It's college football, fantasy football. What more could you want? Alfred, let them know where they can find you, give them your Twitter handle, and tell them a bit about Campus2Canton before we hop into our talking points this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. I'm really excited to be here tonight. Alfred, and then at AlfredJF, spelled exactly how you would think it would be on Twitter. It's usually where I hang out during the day. But co-founded a website last year called Campus2Canton.com. That's with a number 2 in the middle. And we specialize on college fantasy football, a little of the NFL side as well. But basically, if you like the college game and have not gotten into some college fantasy gaming, you're missing out. It's so fun. I mean, it's not just Sundays you get to tilt. You get to tilt on Tuesday night action, Wednesday night action, all day Saturday into the night. Watch your Hawaii game at midnight on the East Coast. But we have a lot of fun. But I love recruiting and really happy to be here because I love nothing more than talking about prospects in college football.
Man, I can't thank you enough for giving me the time this evening. And Alfred, you and I, we're SEC fans, so we always have a lot to look forward to. The SEC is never short on storylines. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone sitting in an office wherever manufacturing stories within the SEC. It seems like it's never ending. But you being a Florida Gators fan, there is as much intrigue, or there should be as much intrigue around the Florida Gators and the state of Florida as any other school and or state this offseason. So first and foremost, you being a Gators fan, a lot of coaching turnover this offseason. I want to hear from you. What's your temperature on the coaching changes and who are your favorite additions?
So I'm personally, like you said, I am a Gator. I went there, grew up a Gator. Both of my parents went there. So I'm going to try not to be a homer. I'm going to try to give I try to be objective in all my analysis, but I am very excited. We went out, got Napier pretty much right at the start of the coaching carousel. We landed him within a couple of weeks after 1 or 2 visits with him. There were rumors, boom, happened, signed him. And I thought it was going to be like the slam dunk hire of the offseason. And then we had a little more fireworks, right? Lincoln Riley, Kelly comes down to LSU, Mario Cristobal comes back home to Miami. So I feel like, we're sitting pretty, we're all happy. Most of us Gators are happy, but the hype really died down because everybody else just went nuts. And with all these other hires. But I think we've got a slow burn going, and it's very promising. And I'm sure we'll get into a little more details later with why it's promising. But in terms of the coaching, like Napier's come in, and you've probably, if you're in the college football world, you've heard this. And that, I joke with my friends. I have a group text with some Gators, and we're always hashtag process, trust the process with Napier, because that's kind of been his shtick coming in. Hey, I take it slow, but I've got a process, blah, blah, blah. But I've really bought in. There seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel here. Obviously, you want to talk about specific coaching. The huge one was getting Raymond over from LSU. I mean, that was his first hire, huge splash, right? And then we kind of were dreaming on the studdiest stud staff you've ever seen. It ended up, I think Raymond was the number 1 guy that we ended up getting. There's some other good ones, but and he's made dividends right away. I mean, we pulled, his name escapes me. We pulled a DB out of IMG almost immediately. Wilson, I think is his name, but which was a huge, Kamari Wilson. We have never been able to recruit IMG, which actually just kind of blows your mind because we're about an hour away from this institution that just breeds college football players, and we never sign anybody from them. It's maddening. So that was a really good, I think, show of good faith by Napier to hire Raymond, said, hey, go get this guy from IMG, boom. And now we've got IMG guys coming to visit, and that needs to be a pipeline for us. I mean, it has to be a pipeline for us. So that was a good start. The other big thing is getting, I think, our O-line and D-line coaches upgraded. You know, we struggled on both sides of the line. You know, I can't remember the last time we had a really dangerous and terrifying, pass rusher, Jakari Polite for like 1 year, but for the most part, we need guys like Alabama has. You know, we need Will Andersons. We need these terrifying edge rushers, and they're all over the state, the Southeast, and we haven't been able to bring any in. So I really like Spencer and what he's done. We'll talk about some names, I'm sure, but like I really think he's revamped the targets we're trying to go for on the D line in recruiting is huge. And then I like the O line seems to be similar, where we're kind of big game hunting for O line and like prioritizing the lines, which is not super sexy, but let's be honest. I mean, football really is won on the lines and with your quarterback.
Oh no, I think that's sexy. I am of the mindset that you can never have too many offensive linemen, right? Like I've said it in videos. I don't care if you got 4 or 5-star offensive linemen the year before. If 2 other 5-stars say, "Hey, we'll join," you take them, and you don't ask the question. You just you can never. Football games. Look, great example, right? Here's a great example. You can have an amazing quarterback, right? You can have the best weapons in the world. But if you don't have an offensive line to get it done, it's all for nothing, right? Russell Wilson is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's running for his life half the times. He cannot be as effective as he wants. So absolutely. To your point about edge rushers, it's great. Y'all are locking down IMG, but the state of Florida is one of the most talent-rich states in the nation when we're talking about recruiting. If we're talking about this year's class, 9 5-stars, right? So you're talking about almost a third of the 5-star population being from one state. If we're talking about the top 300 and 24/7 sports composite, 57 off the top of my head, I could be wrong. It could be 56, but I want to believe it's 57 is what I remember it. You're talking 57 of the top 300 players in the nation from Florida. And if we go back to a few years ago, you're talking about needing pass rush. Dallas Turner out of St. Thomas Aquinas leaves the state of Florida to go to Alabama. He notches 8.5 sacks this year. So talent has never been the state of Florida's problem. It's been about keeping them there. And that's why when you were saying that Florida was looking to put together an all-world staff, and at the end of the day, you thought, well, we got good hires, but Napier was the best one. Man, Napier would be the best hire on almost every staff in the country, in my opinion. I don't think I can name you 5 better assistant coaches that if you were to tell me, "Hey, Ty, you get to take your pick at a staff," he's up there with one of the top 5 guys. If I can get him, I'm absolutely doing so. So we're talking, the state of Florida has so much talent. Y'all did a lot of great work in coaching hires. We're beginning to see some of that in hype, which is the first stage to being able to capitalize on recruiting. But y'all aren't the only ones that have hype. In fact, in the state of Florida, you have Miami right now, who brings in a really good recruiter in their own right, Mario Cristobal. You have Florida State doing whatever it is Florida State's doing right now. I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but they're there. Talk to me about the other 2 institutions there, right? Because I joke about Florida State. Florida State, to me, doesn't seem to be the one that I would be overtly concerned about. But once again, that's why I ask you. You have a better temperature on that. So talk to me about the other institutions in the state.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with following up with what you said. Florida State is just there. That's kind of what's going on with Florida State to me. Like, Norvell had a year. Well, is he entering second year or third year? He's got to be entering his third year. So he's entering year 3, and he just finished. FSU just finished behind the 2 coaching change transition classes in the state of Florida. He finished behind Miami, behind the Gators, and it was close, and they got punked by Travis Hunter. Which we can talk about how that happened, why that happened, all that, but this dude was a Florida State lean for the entire cycle, and then gets up there and goes FCS Jackson State. Like, he punked them, and obviously it's prime over at Jackson State. That was a level of humiliation like I've really not seen much before.
I heard.
The whole thing where, well, it hurt, but it hurt on so many levels, right? It hurt because it was Coach Prime doing it. It hurt because he was a lean, not only a lean, like he was a lock. He was crystal ball to FSU the entire time. And then all of a sudden, literally a couple hours before his commitment, there starts being some rumors like, hey, Jackson State's a thing here. Then he gets up there and he does it. And it's just like, I mean, just embarrassed. I mean, it's more than just losing the recruit. I think it was a real knock to like Norvell, what they're doing and what they're able to do, sealing the deal, and then falling behind the other two schools. Like, what are they doing? I mean, they're promoting the guy. He was at Miami. He was at Florida a little bit. Like he was an off-field assistant, and then they promoted him to an on-field role, and he's like so bad and been bad. He was a DB coach. He was the head coach of Miami. He helped me out for a while.
Not Diaz.
Yeah. No. He was a DB coach at Miami, and then I can see his face. But anyway, I don't want to make it too bad radio. But anyway, so they're just like their hires are blah. They lost Dillingham to go to Oregon, so they lost their OC. It's just, there's nothing there. I mean, we talk about hype, we talk about buzz. I feel like there's none of that with FSU. In addition to, we'll see how their targets wind up and things like that. But like Hakeem Williams, really nice receiver out of the state of Florida, was supposed to go to FSU. And then we talked him into coming and spending a day at Florida before he went there. Now, he still did go to FSU, but like when I see little things like that, where like the guy, a recruit is supposed to go to a school, and then, because this used to happen under Mullen. So I have personal experience where like this guy's supposed to come on Friday and then he doesn't show up. And you hear he stopped by, UGA on his way down to Gainesville. And then you're like, well, now he's going to spend one day here. But it just shows that was supposed to be your weekend with this guy, and he cut it in half and got talked into going somewhere else. Like, that is a small thing, but it's also not a small thing. And so anyway, I think FSU's in real tough shape. And I have some, my FSU friends they're still staying the course and they're still excited somehow. But like, if I was a Seminole fan, I'd be like terrified, because there's just nothing going on. I mean, there's no hype, there's no nothing.
Especially anyway, so then there's two other teams that are making those steps,
building momentum, right? It's all about momentum. And so Miami is a totally different story. I will say, we wanted Cristobal. We thought Cristobal could be on our short list when we had our vacancy before Miami did their whole thing with Diaz and all that. It turns out we got Napier, and then so I was like, well, Cristobal is probably staying in Oregon, and then of course that whole thing went down. And going back home to Miami, and you think he's such a perfect fit. He's at the opening day press conference speaking Spanish to the reporters, and you're like, this is just a perfect storm. This is going to be lightning in a bottle. I have to say I've been a little underwhelmed with the news out of Miami. I mean, they did finish pretty well. Their class was small, but the per star ranking was really nice. So they got some quality commits. But the staff, I don't think, is even filled out yet. I think there's still 2 vacancies, at least as of last week. There's still 2 vacancies on the coaching staff. So like, what are you doing now? It's been 2-3 months. And honestly, they hired one big hire that I think is going to be dangerous. Ade, I think, was the name from UGA, the secondary coach. So I think he might be from down there. So, I mean, he was already killing it at UGA. And I mean, that should be pretty deadly. But if I think about it in terms of the context of if we're competing against the same guys, we have our secret weapon in Raymond, who's also going to be recruiting DBs. So like, they matched our strength with strength. And I don't know if they have, I'm seeing other spots on their staff right now that scare me in terms of head-to-head competition. Now, Cristobal is a great recruiter as in and of himself, right? So he's great. He's from the area. That should be pretty lethal in terms of just crushing Miami. I think we can survive crushing the center of the state and maybe creeping into South Georgia as our like true pipeline. And Miami can have Miami and the South. but I haven't sensed that they're crushing it, I guess. And maybe I'm too focused and too blinders on UF, because I think we're doing a really great job right now. And maybe Miami, I'm not like exactly as up to date on exactly who's visiting in March down in Miami, but I thought it was going to be a little more, I think, just kind of pub and hype than there is right now. And maybe it's 'cause I don't know why he's having trouble hiring people. They've historically had an issue with funding. They've been, they're a fairly small private school. I think they've had an issue really rallying the boosters and everybody to really dump money into the program. So I don't know if they've run out of money to fill out the staff, but that was part, I think, of bringing Cristobal over was, hey, we are revamping the donor situation. We are going to give you the money to make this program what it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. And that's why he came. So we'll see. I thought it would be a little bit more hot fire than it is at the moment, but I think they're in good shape. I mean, I'm concerned. We play them in 2 years. They pulled Citizen out of we thought we had Citizen, and they pulled him. And I think he's good, but I also think running backs kind of are interchangeable. I mean, unless you have an elite guy like Trevion Henderson or something like that.
Oh yeah, Trevion Henderson is phenomenal. He's from an area of Virginia where I have a lot of family in that area. And as I started doing this, I got a call from some of my family members when they found out I started doing this. And they're like, you know about a kid up here named Trevion Henderson? And they were just, he is spectacular, right? Everybody in the Virginia area knew about him coming out. But you make an interesting point, and there's two areas I want to take it. First and foremost, you're talking about Corey Raymond, right? We talked about Corey Raymond to begin this. Alabama made a hire out of Miami. I love the hire. Travaris Robinson, cornerback coach who is deep in terms of who he can recruit and how he can develop them. You seeing as a Florida fan, Travaris Robinson exit that situation, how do you feel about that, right? And then two, for me, I knew the Dan Mullen days were done when he made that comment saying, I'll worry about recruiting when the season is over. Now, look, for all my people watching, you can't say that in college football. But for all of my SEC fans, you damn well can't say that in the SEC. You cannot say that in the SEC. That's when I was just like, oh, that's the last remark. That's it. Interested in hearing your take on both of those.
So we call him T-Rob, Travaris Robinson. He's actually, former Gator coach. I don't know if he played for Florida. No, he was at Auburn. But then he's from the South. He's from Miami, and then did coach at Florida. I believe it was under Muschamp 2011 to something like that. So that must have been Muschamp, I think.
He was, but anyway, Muschamp. He was with a bunch. It's funny. All the guys came from the same staff at South Carolina that Alabama has hired.
Yeah, I think he was with Muschamp. Yeah, I think he was with Muschamp when Muschamp was at Florida, and then he ended up also coaching with him during the stint at South Carolina. Went to Miami for 1 year. But yeah, I'm not sure. He's probably a good coach, but I think he's a real good recruiter, and he's got ties to ties to Miami. You're talking about DBs out of Miami. That is DBs and wide receivers out of the South. I mean, that's what you want. So, I think it's a great hire. I think if nothing else, just to keep your roots in the South Miami, Dade County. Like, you want to be in Dade County. I mean, you've got to be there. So if nothing else, it gives you the in. I'm sure he has tons of connections to high school coaches and everything down there. As far as on field, I'm not as familiar with if he's a good DB coach, but let's be honest, it's about recruiting and bringing those guys in, and less about the Saban can handle the DBs. You just go bring me the guys. And so I think that's a great hire as well. And then the other question was the comment by Okay, so good. I mean, this is just an interesting kind of story, I guess. So me and I have a 3-way group chat where we are just plugged into Gator everything, like message boards, the whole 9 yards, right? So honestly, into year 2, maybe beginning of year 3 under Mullen, I already was like, this is a problem, because yeah, we were winning games. We were actually winning the East in a down East. So we were winning the East, but like it wasn't impressive because Georgia hadn't quite become Georgia yet, what they are now. But we were not recruiting, and little things began to happen, like I described earlier. Guys were supposed to visit, then they wouldn't. We had 3 options to close on signing day. We'd go 0 for 3. Things like that, where we're not closing and we're not getting, like, we'd wind up with a bunch of 4 stars, but we're not getting that elite cream of the crop. We're not challenging for top 10 in the country or even top 10 in the state of Florida. We were down getting guys, and I mean players. We were getting players ranked 11 to 20 in the state of Florida. So we weren't even challenging for the elites in our own state. So me and my friends who were really following closely were like, this is a problem. Like, he's showing that recruiting is not going to change here. So what are we going to do? And so then it obviously cratered. The last year happened and he makes that comment. So, and there's like my father who loves the Gators, but not really as plugged in. And he just like goes wins and losses, like, hey, we're doing okay. And I would be telling him like, I think we're in trouble. And he's like, well, we're winning games. We're fine. And so he makes that comment. I'm like, Dad, I told you, he sucks. Like, he won't recruit. You can't say that. You can't do that. Like, and finally my dad believes me and he's like, yeah, you're right. Maybe we just got to move on, but it took that, I think, for a lot of people who are maybe a little more casual or maybe don't quite realize the impact of this attitude towards recruiting matters so much, that I think it took that comment and then the backlash. I mean, the national media ran with that comment. Like ESPN talking heads were talking about it. Right. I mean, people latched onto that. And I think the public at large realized like, oh yeah, I mean, Mullen doesn't have what it takes, period. He's an X's and O's guy, like we talked before, but he wasn't a CEO. He wasn't very organized on the infrastructure. And then, he just, I don't know if he gave up recruiting at some point during his tenure or if he never wanted it. But I'll also say this. I think that being a good recruiter sounds absolutely terrible. I love recruiting and recruits and prospecting and who's going to be good and getting the stars. I love it as a fan. I follow it intensely. To have to wake up every morning and text a 17-year-old, hey, you're the best, I'm thinking about you, or I don't know what they text them. But like, to have to stay on top of multiple guys all the time and be stroking the ego and recruiting and going on visits. And I mean, honestly, what a nightmare. But that's why they're getting paid like $10 million. But I have to say, like, I get it. If you don't want to recruit, I get it, but get out of my school.
And don't say it.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
Well, actually, I'm glad he said it because maybe that got him out.
In fairness, true. Good point. For you, it's a good thing that he did say it because it ended up to be the situation you had. In closing,
well, didn't like Kirby even? Sorry to cut you off, but didn't even Kirby Smart Kirby Smart even like clapped back, I think, at his like one of the next pressers that was a major press conference, and he basically said like, we never stop recruiting over here at Georgia. And I'm just like, this is so bad, like the dichotomy there.
I think a lot of coaches had little veiled shots, right? Like, oh, well, how do you do it? And it's just like 24/7, 365. We're thinking about recruiting. We're talking about recruiting. Like that's just the nature of the college game. And especially for y'all, when you have Georgia right there. Look, we can talk about the SEC, Alabama's there, Georgia's, but, more specifically, you look in your division. And you have Georgia who, if Alabama's not the number 1 recruiting class in the nation, it's Georgia. And so you really can't have that attitude with them in your backyard. 2 points before.
Yeah, and they're right there siphoning off. They're right there siphoning off your talent. Alabama's coming into your state. It's just Clemson set up a pipeline in Tampa.
Exactly.
Like, Clemson's just coming in, grabbing the best guys out of Tampa, which is an hour away. I mean, it's been very frustrating, if you can tell in my voice, for the last like 5 or 6 years.
I'm glad you said that because that's actually the perfect segue. My 2 questions I have, and one of them is actually a 2-part, so we'll say 3 for simplicity's sake. I'm interested as a Florida fan, your expectations in the spring what you're looking for in the spring, and your expectations in the fall. And when I say expectations, I do mean recruiting. Are you going to be able to put up a fence, quote unquote fence? Because I think now recruiting's so national, you're not going to keep everybody. It's just about winning the battles that are most important. Do you think they can do that? Two, what do you think the product looks like on the field in the spring? Give me some names you're looking forward to. And then finally, I don't think we'd be doing our due diligence if we closed here and not talk about the quarterback situation. Anthony Richardson, very talented, but very interested in hearing from you in that regard as well. So I'll turn it over to you with those 3 points.
Okay, yeah, this is my favorite stuff to talk about. I think, okay, so I was doing a little prep for this podcast because I follow this closely, but my thoughts weren't organized. But to answer your question about recruiting, what's happening in the spring, March has been a very exciting time for us. And I've been talking to some of my buddies and saying, like, is this me imagining it? Are we like really bringing some high-end talent to Florida to on campus for visits that we just haven't really been doing in the past? They all agreed, like, no, it's not your imagination, really happening. I mean, just for example, I highlighted the top 10 recruits per 24/7 in the state of Florida. We've got, I believe, 7 of the top 10 coming to visit on campus in March. We've got, McLean is obviously one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the country, #1 in the state of Florida. And he's now crystal ball 50-50 Bama UF. So like, that's huge. I mean, we say that.
I said it's going to be a great battle.
Right. But like, we haven't even been in those battles for years. I mean, we haven't even been the 50-50. It's been Bama and Clemson, Bama and Georgia. Like, if we can even get in there, I want to get his signature, but like, we haven't even been top 2 for some of these studs in a really long time. We got Keeley on campus. This guy, I love Keeley, defensive end out of Tampa, I believe. I mean, I think he's an absolute monster. He's committed to Notre Dame, but apparently, a lot of these kids in the Central Florida area, they grew up Florida fans. I mean, if you're talking, what are we in 2022? That means we were winning national titles about 15 years ago. Back to, or 2 out of 3 years. When these kids were growing up, Florida was absolutely hot, just the hottest team in the country, hottest program. So like, it's natural. These guys in the Central Florida area, they probably grew up really interested in Florida. Since then, it's gone downhill. But like, their early days, Florida was it when they were little kids coming up. So we've got a lot of these guys you hear that, grew up a Florida fan. That was another thing under Mullen that just drove me insane. We heard guys, grew up a Florida fan, winds up at Clemson. Grew up a Florida fan, winds up at Bama. Grew up a Florida fan, winds up at Auburn. Just a total joke. So we have to keep these guys in state. We absolutely have to. And the first step is getting them on campus. Like I said, 7 of the top 10. We're shooting for the moon. And I think we have to do that. We got 7 out of 10 on campus. Some of them have already come. One thing that's really interesting just came out on 24/7 today, or is on 3, I think, reported a little tidbit. So there's a defensive end, LeBlanc, and then Malik Bryant, who's an edge rusher, and then Peyton Kirkland, who's a big offensive lineman. They're all in the state, all top 20 in the state. And like, apparently they're talking or kind of hinting that they might all be a package deal. And like, right now, there are some people that think Florida's got the edge there. That's the kind of stuff we got to do. Like, you probably remember, back when Urban was there, we landed like the trio out of Lakeland. We just like went into Lakeland and landed like 4 or 5 stars. There was the Pouncey twins, who obviously went on to great NFL careers. Chris Rainey, who was a great college player, and others. And so like, we have to do that. We just haven't been doing that. So I'm excited. These names are big names. We're not settling. We're going for the big guys, and then we got to close. But right now, it's looking promising. And we're getting some IMG guys, like I said, which is huge. I mean, I want to see those names. I want to see these visit lists just loaded with stuff. Additionally, we're cherry picking some of the guys in Georgia. Now, do I think we're going to win these guys? I don't know. That's a tall order. But we're bringing in 3 of the top 10 in the state of Georgia on campus in March. So like, we're getting these unofficials. Obviously, when officials start happening, that's going to be the real telltale when guys are going to blow one of their 5 officials on us, which we hope they do. But like we're shooting for these big names, and that's something I have not been used to. Like in the past few years, it's been one or two names, and we're putting all our eggs in their basket, and we're going into signing day saying like we have to get this guy or it's a failure. The difference now is we've got options. It seems like we've got a lot of these guys, and so hopefully we'll take two or three of them. That would be great. Honestly, two or three out of the top 10 in Florida would be like such an improvement over what's been happening that would be really exciting. And then, so that's kind of what I see happening in the recruiting front. It's promising, but obviously it's all hype until you actually sign them. So we'll see. But the spring, so like what's going to happen in the spring, the product we're going to see in the, the spring game, orange and blue game, I think it's going to look different. So I love it if it was like air raid. I'm a big passing game fan. So, I mean, I'd love to, throw the ball around the yard and just like pass at 75% clip. That would be great. But I don't think that's what Napier is going to do. I don't have a problem running the ball if you're creative. I don't have a problem running the ball. One thing I think in a football strategy is I think up-tempo run game is kind of something that is not utilized and could be kind of deadly because you're controlling tempo, you're pounding the ball, but you're doing it fast. I don't know why run game always has to be associated with like milking the clock and being slow. You can be fast and just keep ramming it, which I think is maybe what Napier might try to do. So, and also be creative. Like, don't just run up an I form and just like run up, between the guards. Like, you can be creative with a run game. I think that's what I saw a lot of at Louisiana. So I'm happy if that happens. I just want to see creativity. And generally speaking, I think up tempo is the way to go. Look, you know Nick Saban. This guy was all ground and pound, play defense for the first few years. And now he's come out and he's like, why would you go slow? Why would you ever go slow on offense? Like, I love it. I mean, he's shown that he's grown, he's learned, he's adapted, and that's why he's the best. You can't just stick to your guns. I mean, if you learn new information, you have to adapt. So
exactly.
I'd like to see us do that. And then, just looking at the hires on the D line and O line in terms of coaches, and then the guys that we're looking to get. I had one little stat. Now, this might be small sample size, little blip, but anecdotally, I'm looking at our guys we're bringing on campus, our targets on the D line, and I'm thinking these guys seem bigger than the guys we've done in the past. Like, we've been getting these 220-pound DEs, and I guess hopefully you beef them up or whatever. But I looked, and currently our offer list for the D line is only two guys 240 pounds or less. There's one who's 240, there's one who's 220. Everyone else is at least 250 or above. Last year, or no, back in 2020, so kind of before the recruiting class before Mullins last year, 5 players at 240 or below on the D line. So I didn't have time to like go back further in history to see, is this a trend or anything? But like anecdotally, it seems like we're targeting big, fast D linemen. Obviously, you love to see it. I don't want to be getting these smaller guys and hoping they beef up. I want the Will Andersons. I want the Dallas Haydens. Like, I want DEs that you absolutely have to double team, that you and I think we're at least trying to do that. And that's, I like to see the effort. I like to see us going out and trying to do that. I like our offer list in terms of the lines better than I have in recent memory. Hevesty, our old O-line coach, is like, we used to joke, I mean, famous for, offering 3-star guys with the only other offer was like Eastern Washington or something, and like, what are you doing? So it's encouraging to see us, we're going for the big stars and we got to sign them. But like, I just think we're targeting more of a player that can be elite, like go up against the Bamas of the world, the Georgias. And if you don't do that, we're always going to be second fiddle. So you got to try, and it's promising. So I'd like to see that on defense. I think our DC is, I think he's good. In fact, a lot of the commentary was Napier's good. And his name is Tony, something Patrick Tony, I think is his name. But there were some people that were like, he's the prize. Like, he's literally a young stud on the defense. And he's been impressive. I mean, the guys were getting on campus, the DBs on March 19th, I think, we're getting three. I like that they scheduled together. We're getting like the 3 5-star DBs on the campus all at the same time. McLean, guy out of Alabama who's a 5-star, and then AJ Harris, who's another 5-star. So like we're getting them all on campus in the same. Yeah, Mitchell. That's right. And so we're getting them all on campus in the same weekend. I love that. Make it like DBU weekend. And I think there's some strategy behind some of these things. We also have a weekend where we're having like 3 guys from Georgia. So it's like, I think we're kind of like systematically planning, okay, that's the Georgia weekend. We're getting all the guys together. This is the DB weekend. We're going to hype that up. Like, and that all matters. I mean, little things matter. When you're going up against Alabama in the recruiting cycle and you're going up against Georgia, like the food you serve, everything matters, I think, And so I think the details they're paying attention to the details. Anyway, I'm going more on recruiting. The product on the field, I think we're going to be run. I think we're going to be a lot more physically intimidating. And I think the defense is going to, I mean, Grantham was a total disaster and everybody knows and everybody knew it when we hired him. And so I think the defense is going to look last year. I don't have words. I mean, I just don't have words. Like, it's incredible. I mean, it's 3rd and 8, and you're just like, they're going to get the first. I know it. Like 3rd and Grantham. And my Georgia friends used to say it when he coached at Georgia. And I'd roll my eyes, be like, oh, you're just being, butthurt about it. And he comes to Florida and it's like, nope, 3rd and Grantham. It's really a thing. Like, that is really a thing. It's just, what he's going to do. He's going to bring pressure, and you just literally draw up a slant to beat the pressure, and you're going to get it. So
that's why I love him as an analyst, because you can take certain things from his blitz packages and utilize them in your defense. So I think as an analyst, you love to have him. But if you can have someone else that's a bit more controlled as your defensive coordinator, it's great. I completely agree.
Well, you just can't be predictable, and he was just so predictable. I mean, I'm sure he has concepts that are good because he's been a high-level coach for a long time, but like he just got super predictable. And then the quarterback, obviously, this is a huge question. I've heard rumors that like Jack Miller is going to challenge. I think it's going to be an open competition. I don't see why he would have come down here. I'm sure he wasn't promised, yeah, you're going to start, but I'm sure he was promised like, you can come. We have no preconceived notions, open camp. I think Emory Jones will leave after the orange and blue game, I guess, unless he's so good or multiple injuries happen and he's looking like the sure thing starter. Otherwise, I can't imagine he hangs around. So then that brings us to Anthony Richardson, right? So I'm an upside guy. I play upside all day in my fantasy leagues. I play upside all day in how I construct a team, how I would construct a team in real life. I'd rather be first or last. And so to me, you roll out Anthony Richardson, and yeah, he may throw 3 picks and complete 48% of his passes, but he also may run for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, I think he gives the defenses just something they can't handle. And so, unless he's so dreadful as a passer that we've only seen him in limited spurts, if you give him an entire game and he's so bad that you just like cannot move the ball through the air at all, obviously that could be limiting, but I just think he is an absolute freak running the ball. Like, he is a freak show. And you just don't get that at quarterback very often.
Well, it's funny. A year ago at this time, I made a video with Quarterback Spotlight. If you have the opportunity to do some content with him, fantastic content creator evaluating the quarterback position. And he was talking to me. He was excited to see what Emory Jones was going to do into the spring and then into this past year. And I told him, I said, Steven, there's a kid on that team who nobody's going to give a chance in this quarterback battle. But what I saw from him last year, if you can tap into that and develop him, Anthony Richardson is someone to watch. I had a lot of Florida fans push back on me, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Push comes to shove, he goes out there, and I'm like, this is what I was talking about. And I think it points to what you're saying. If you can develop him, his skill set is so deep, how do you want to affect the defense? You want to bring the safeties up because they think that he's about to run? Well, we'll just hit you over top. You're scared about his arm talent because he's got a massive arm, right?
Cannon, yeah. remains to be seen about accuracy, but absolute cannon. Yeah.
Accuracy is the question. Being able to push it down the field is a question nobody's ever asked about Anthony Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got all these different things if he develops as a passer. I mean, you're talking about a dynamic, deadly quarterback, one that you have to be excited about. And so that's why I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on Florida in that quarterback position in particular. If you were a betting man, and given that you play fantasy, at some level you are, right?
I'm definitely a betting man.
Who would you bet to win that job?
I have to say Anthony Richardson. He can't be so inept at throwing that you just can't trust him to like go out there and win with his legs. I mean, it can't negate the legs. Like he can't be that bad. I've seen him throw the ball. So I think it's Anthony Richardson. I mean, Jack Miller, he had some interesting, I went back and watched his like huddle vids back in Arizona when he was a recruit. And he was a top 10 recruit in the country. Good. And, yeah, he looked good. The arm looked a little soft, not a cannon, but definitely a threat on the ground. I think he had multiple injuries between senior year and maybe even at Ohio State. So he's just never gotten a chance to kind of like get settled and establish himself. But the arm doesn't look like an SEC, high level SEC arm to me, at least back in, I guess it was his junior tape, because I'm not sure he played senior year in high school. But I know what I've seen with Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to win the job outright with a new coach who's not invested in any of these guys because he didn't recruit any of them. And it's interesting that there were some Emory Jones believers. I was not one. I knew he was going to go into the season as the starter, and I was like, okay, show me something. And then he didn't. He does nothing special at all. He doesn't run special. He doesn't throw special. He doesn't process the game in a special way. He is so basic, which isn't what I expected. When he came to us, I remember going to my car at my lunch hour, watching his presser when he announced to come to Florida back years ago at this point as a recruit. And I was so excited. He just didn't turn out to be a guy. I mean, he's just not a guy. He's a jag, I guess you could say. So I think let him go play maybe for FAU or something and knock it out of the park there. And then we should go with the upside Anthony Richardson. I guess the only caveat there is if Jack Miller comes on and is like, if he's awesome in spring, I'd be happy to see him play, but I'm not expecting that. So as it stands right now, I'd say Richardson.
That's probably who I'd have to go with. Here's what I will say, because I always worry a little bit less about arm strength, and I'm always worried about, can you deliver it to the areas of the field I need? Like if you can make that 35-yard across the field, out route throw, that's all I need. Mm-hmm. If you can hit that, that's all you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Jack, and in college, there's more margin for error. He may not be an NFL guy, but he could probably get it done in college.
Yeah, I think he's very talented. He's going to be interesting to see. Alfred, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you've got better things to do than sit here with me, but I've really enjoyed this. I'd like you to tell everybody once again where they can find you at. That way they can get more connected with you, more familiar with what it is you do.
Yeah, so at AlfredJF on Twitter, my DMs are always open. If you have any questions about this concept of Campus to Canton, I'd love to chat with you about it. Super fun format. Additionally, if you're on this and you're watching YouTube, we do have a YouTube channel. So even if you don't want to go, to the website, check out our channel. We got all sorts of shows. We have multiple creators. I do a recruiting podcast every single week where we are actually diving a little bit more into we're trying to solve recruiting from an analytics point of view, which not many people are doing. There's another recruiting show. We have two, and then a bunch of other content, of course. But if you like recruiting, it's called The Official, and play on Official Visit. And then, so we're doing that once a week. But otherwise, if nothing else, hit me up on Twitter. Let's chat.
Absolutely. And Anthony, I'm talking about Anthony Richardson, and now I have that on. I have that on the.
That's a compliment. That's a compliment.
I'm so excited for spring games. What I was going to say is, Alfred, after the spring game, we're going to have you back on so we can talk about what Anthony Richardson looked like in that game relative to the other quarterbacks and what we're expecting But man, I can't thank you enough for being here this evening. We'll get you back on after that. And as always, y'all, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. That's it. See ya.